the reason we partnered with Nicole and Lineche to make this virtual reality called Awavana, which basically is a spiritual journey of somebody that feels that is in the community and is part of a ceremony led by the first woman shaman, Yawanawa Ushaho. And it tells it tells you, the journey of how it feels to drink our sacred drink, which is uni, called ayahuasca, and it takes you to the spiritual world. So it's a very beautiful 17-minute virtual reality that we created. We took it to the World State Forum, so with the hope that state leaders could watch it and other very powerful people could change their minds about the forest and indigenous peoples. So this is a very powerful instrument that technology has, that can be used in good ways. Thank you.
Nicole?
I'm Nicole Noonan, and I'm the producer of Awavana with Laura and her husband Toshka, the chief of the Yawanawa. And I'm a documentary filmmaker. I have been for about 25 years. And I got into virtual reality by being really awed by the work of Lynette Walworth, who's the director of Awavana, who's an immersive artist, who I felt was really leveraging immersive technologies for decades, actually, as they evolved, to provoke kind of an experience of awe and wonder and an emotional response in people that really changed the way they were able to see things. And she had an interest in trying to share with people the way indigenous Australians viewed the land and the way they thought about things 7 generations into the future. And so I partnered with her to produce Collisions, which I think will be available today, and that was a virtual reality film about a Martu man from Australia who had witnessed an atomic test in the 1950s. And we were able to take that piece to the World Economic Forum in Davos and Sundance and the comprehensive test ban treaty meetings in Vienna, and really try to take advantage of letting people see and feel that experience through his eyes, and see the impact of our short-term thinking and our technologies on the planet, the way he saw and felt it. And one of the most beautiful things that happened with that project was that Laura and Toshka came to see it and saw the potential in the technology and how Lynette was working to create a wonder.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Lauren Graham. I'm the Director of Innovation at Climate Access. I work with CARA PIKE. And part of what my job is really focusing on using virtual reality tools as a platform for community engagement and public action. So the project that I'll be talking about today is called Look Ahead San Francisco. And if you stay around for the showcase, you'll be able to try it out. So really our goal or our theory of change was around seeing how can you create create a way to break through that not me, not here, not now, so that people can experience what the impacts of sea level rise would look like on their community, and then connect that to public action. So my work really focuses around the local government engagement and helping people to transition from just feeling and being interested in the topic to actually being able to take a very specific direct action. And my background is mostly in environment, but I've done a lot of work around using creative media and public events for education, outreach, and advocacy. So how I got to virtual reality was working in documentary film and with social impact gaming and getting to that point. I also consult to nonprofits and social enterprises, so the whole process of building something from the ground up and seeing what the potential for new technology is to help people who are maybe not in a position of privilege and are not connected to the climate movement, though they do care, to make sure that they have a seat at the table and that their voices are heard, especially when it comes to local government and participatory planning.
Great, I'm Matthieeu.
Hello. 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 So I'm Matthieeu. So I have a background as a visual anthropologist, so I studied anthropology and then...
Can't hear you. Just speak up a bit. Just speak up a little bit.
Yeah. Can you hear me well? Right. So I studied as a visual anthropologist, And this is much better. So once again, I studied as a visual anthropologist, and at one point I kind of asked myself how I can be a storyteller and tell those stories. So for the last 5-6 years, I've been very focused on the loss of land due to the rising sea, with like native people around the planet. But I started my own project in Cunayala, in Panama, where I was traveling. So this is like 350 islands between Panama and Colombia, and they have this issue of rising sea, but they're losing the entire homeland, and now they have kind of an issue just to go back to the mainland. So I start as a photographer covering the whole story, and I've been very intrigued to understand what's the global situation with the loss of land due to climate change. So I went to Kiribati in the Pacific nation of Kiribati. That was like 5 years ago. It was based on an installation I wanted to make in Montreal, Canada, where, as you know, we have very cold winters. So I did an old installation called Melting Tropics, which was like 10 feet long ice wall with photograph of Kiribati embedded. And when the spring's coming, the whole installation was melting. So really, for people to get this awareness of the vanishing land and the loss of territories. But I was very, very fortunate when I first went to Kiribati to meet with President Tong, President of Kiribati, and I was so amazed by his incredible journey trying to save the entire nation. And what is very interesting with President Tong is head of states and going to all these very high-level meetings, but back home in his own country is also a bit like as a shaman. In Kiribati, they have this very strong connection to tradition, but also to the land. So I found this kind of incredible character, which is at the same time a head of state and a shaman. And I decided to follow him for almost 4 years. And I made a feature doc that was premiered this year at Sundance in 2018. But about virtual reality, I remember my first experience was a piece from Felix and Paul, and they did something called Stranger, where you were with a musician, which actually I love, called Patrick Watson. So basically, I was sitting with him in his living room. He was playing piano, and I was like, this is just incredible. This is just like I'm with him, and I have this kind of memory of sharing time with him. And I've been thinking, how can I use this technology basically to witness things? And for me, since the first trip to Kiribati, I was like, people cannot reach that place. I mean, technically you can, but chances to go there are almost zero. So first, it's extremely expensive and far, and just it's not like something people can easily do. So for me, this technology was from day one a tool, a teleportation tool, basically, for people to just travel there and witnessing from their own eyes in a different way. And then I start actually, filming some tradition there, and I realized also it became an archive that maybe down the road, in 20 or 50 years, when the whole place will be underwater, and people can just look back using this technology and say, oh, it was like this. We don't have it anymore. So I also, by doing it, I realized the importance of building, almost a visual arc of things that's just, disappearing. And it's quite a different feeling also to have a teleportation experience. I did it 3D, stereoscopic and biphonic, so it's quite immersive. And so for me, it became an extremely important tool. As a witness and as basically building this. Archive of something that is vanishing.
So I think you have a few slides, right, Matthew, that we'll jump to so we can get a little bit of a look at your project.
Yeah, but we can just, I think I have to do it. Wait. Yeah. Oh, this is Kiribati. This is the land of Kiribati. You can see that the whole water is just taking the land, and the entire place is an average of 1 meter above the sea level. So with the rising sea, we know that within 50 years, I think even sooner, people won't be able to live there anymore. So I'll just go, just go quick. So I think for me, as a storyteller, I try to use the different tools I have. So for now, it's really like film, photography, still photography, it can be VR, but just like finding a way to convey a story using the different tools. So I did this first series of photographs for an assignment for the New York Times, and then I jumped into making a feature film, which took me 5 years. And I came back after the feature film was released. I came back to Kiribati and making some exhibition. So I think I had a screening here in San Francisco. It was interesting because within the theater we put photo exhibits, and then the people can go to the feature and eventually try also the VR. So I think every different tool brings another aspect of the story. And here we go, filming with this 360 camera. Not a bad place to be. And this presentant trying the VR for the first time in RYTZ, and he never ever tried the technology, and I was very moved when he first tried it, because that was his first VR experience, but also he understood the power of the tool. And that's an example also, that was at Docs in Toronto, where you can use also this public, that's a big shopping mall, and we bring like the photo exhibit and the VR, so people just run through it and just witness things and understand the issue better.
Great, thank you. Yeah, that's definitely been our experience with Climate Access too, is the importance of mixing VR with other tools that standing on its own is powerful, but when you incorporate it with some others. I want to invite Peter to the panel, who just joined us. Peter is with Tactic and was our partner on Look Ahead San Francisco, but has done a lot of other sustainability-focused VR work. So Peter, if you want to just quickly introduce yourself and your background, that'd be great.
Yeah, thanks. And apologies for I had back-to-back appointments, and the commute in San Francisco is a difficult one. So thanks for having me today. We had a great time working with your group on the Look Ahead project, and we felt like it was a great expression of what the potential of VR and 360 was in kind of an advocacy role and using technology in a really powerful way to visualize what climate change would look like in our own backyard, so to speak. My background originally, just a little bit about how I got here, is I worked in feature films, and so we were all about creating illusions and making them look realistic. I was a visual effects supervisor for various Hollywood features and through the years, and had a visual effects company here in San Francisco for a couple decades, and all of that was fun, but none of it really was towards an effort that was maybe non-commercial and worthwhile. And so it was a real great opportunity to work on Look Ahead and be able to visualize kind of where we're going as a society and what sea level rise, what the implications were for that in our own backyard. And I think being able to visualize that convincingly and in this medium of 360 allows people to see in a first person point of view kind of what this really would be like, along the Embarcadero and Hunters Point, different points around the city that they know and love, be able to see it from kind of a different vantage point, different perspective, and really see kind of the threats that are involved there. And then not only the threats, it's not, but how we might be able to mitigate these things through different techniques. And the other thing about this medium is it's come up quite fast. We work in virtual reality and now a lot in augmented reality for brands and agencies and such. These new forms of visualization allow people to engage with ideas in ways that they have an openness to do so, I think, because there's a curiosity, and then once they see something, they kind of allow themselves to be immersed in that moment. And the medium, because it's sort of exploratory, we're finding opportunities to do, you know, things like VR for good a little bit more than I would, you know, in more traditional media. We've done things, you know, promoting clean water use in rural Thailand. We had a project we did with an agency there. You know, we did a piece for ICON and Nobel Peace Prize about the Hiroshima Nagasaki bombing and nuclear proliferation that was in Tribeca. We did another piece called Phone of the Wind about Fukushima, the Fukushima survivors. So I'm finding that we're finding these commissions and opportunities where people are trying to tell these stories in a new way. And Look Ahead was part of that. So we've been able to do, I think, work that's both really fun and interesting and creatively exciting, but also has allowed a group of storytellers to get together and you know, kind of explore the medium for what it's good at.
Great, thank you. I want to go back to Lara and Nicole. I know you've got a little bit of an image for us to see the piece.
Just like a 30-second trailer.
Yeah, so if we can cue that up, that would be great. And while that's getting cued up, once we see that, I'd love you to talk a little bit more about what you learned about virtual reality as a tool for telling your story. So have we got the clip there? Yes, thank you.
This work started as an invitation from the chief of the Yawanawa, who actually saw collisions, the first VR work. And he had an instant response to how this technology, VR, immersive kind of world, could apply. He basically said, okay, I can see how we could use this. So you're going to have to come to the Amazon. But the very first thought from that moment was always about their old shaman who had lived through slavery, who'd lived through the period of the missionaries, and who had trained the very first woman shaman of the Yawanawas. So it's the story of a woman shaman, but it's a marriage of technologies. Our technology carried into their community, so they can use their technology, which is a visioning technology, the ayahuasca ceremony, to send out this message about the transformation of their culture when a woman was allowed to become a shaman. It's like a perfect combination, story and technology.
First, we met Lynette in 2011, and that time she showed me really what's happened. The first time when I saw that, it was like a dream. And I turned to her and asked to her, we can do something with the Yawanawa. She said, yes, of course we can do it. I said, wow, I was really excited about it. And sometime you translated the vision to have uni into technology. You can see that.
What you are doing here is very amazing, it's very powerful because you're using the technology to hopefully show that this world is not about, material things, that this world has more. There are things beyond that we don't see with our eyes, which is love, which is harmony, which is respect for nature. That's what nature teaches, and that's what Yawanawa knows. Not only Yawanawa, but all indigenous people's spirituality.
When I met you and Lynette, I trust you guys. Instantaneous, momentaneous. I don't need to take a year. I think because I think our spirit is connecting. We speak the same language, we have the same goals, we have the same proposal. What we want to do is to matter for everybody. I really believe that. For this reason, I think we are doing this because we trust in good. And when we trust in something solid things, the energy, they come, they make it happen because we are just a tool.
One of the most amazing things about working with Lynette is that if you work with her, you're going to be working on the absolute cutting edge of technologies that are emerging, because she knows that by giving people an experience of a new technology for the first time, she's going to be provoking a feeling of awe. And it's that feeling of awe about the natural world. And so we really spent a lot of time showing the VR to them in the field and enabling them to understand how the camera works and what it was seeing, so that then they could show us what they wanted to show us in terms of what the ceremony was going to look like, how it was going to be orchestrated, what was going to be on the table. So I think that VR is really well suited to films that are made in collaboration with communities in that way, and in that way it's kind of almost easier. Like most projects with Planet, even though it all seems really quixotic and difficult, it all comes together in the end. And we did leave the jungle with all of the footage we hope to capture, just like Toshka, the chief, and the shamans said that we would.
I think when they put on the sunglasses, they just cannot believe what they see. Wow, that's going to be a magical moment.
When we'd send headsets into the community so that everyone in the community could actually experience the technology firsthand for themselves. And the really amazing and wonderful thing about that is that, like whilst we are here all trying to work on the haptics that can go with immersive technologies, the Yawanawa put the VR headsets on and they just lay down on the ground. Because for them, what they wanted to do was intensify the sensation of being out of the body. So that's what I love about this project, that it's Yawanawa looking at this technology saying, this is where we would take it. This is what we think it intensifies. This is what we think it can help open up in you.
To share is to have the privilege from people that never have opportunity to visit the jungle, to visit the forest. That's kind of window, we can open a window for people. We sit in a chair like I am here right now, but they're transported into that and they can live the experience. After they live that, they're never going to be the same person, because that experience will be forever in his life.
So one of the key themes is this ability to create a felt experience. And on an issue like climate change, where so much of it has been a technical conversation led by experts, people feel distant from it, really powerful tool. So back to my question though to you, Laura, what did you learn in terms of the experience and the best uses of virtual reality for that experience and for the kind of storytelling that you were wanting to do?
Yeah, virtual reality, it was something very new that we learned, like Tashka was saying. When he was in Oxford, he watched collisions. It was his first experience to virtual reality, and he was very impressed by it, and because for a long time, we wanted actually to share the story of Tata, an elder shaman, Yawanawa shaman. He actually was there and he passed on last year. But our dream was to show the spiritual world of Tata. But he passed on, and then we decided to do the story of Ushaho. Ushaho is a student of Tata, and she was the first Yawanawa woman to break a taboo to become a shaman. And basically, in order for us to show a spiritual vision, it was very hard to make it, like regular film. So virtual reality was a new tool that we could use to make the people who is watching to feel that they are going through this journey, that they are in the community and that they are experiencing this connection with nature and with the spirits. And So this is a tool, that we, Yawanawa, were using to be able to transmit a message, a very deep message. We didn't want to transmit a negative message. We wanted to see how can we, make those decision makers, leaders, to understand that our forest have life, that our forest has spirits, that we cannot kill, our forests, because we have this relationship, and how important this spirituality is to maintain in order for these states to save, to protect our forests. We are talking here about climate change. And who is creating the equilibrium right now is indigenous people's forests and ecosystems. We are the protectors, we are the guardians of what is left. So we try to use this tool to make people change their minds, and in a good way, in a very beautiful way, not confronting, not with violence, no, because you are like this, no. We try to bring this peace to these people, to really try to feel, to really feel the spiritual world of nature.
It's
Go
really,
for it, Nicole.
I mean, I just wanted to say that I was over and over again impressed by the perspective that you came from, which is this is really a gift, and watching, some very busy, harried corporate heads at Davos come kind of stumbling out of the exhibit, saying things to me like, this is what this is a profound philosophical shift, It's not, and that's one thing that I'm really impressed by around VR, is that in a short space of time, you can do something that would take hours, I think, in the traditional kind of expository film. It can be very, very deep and profound, and it can also travel into these intimate spaces where people who otherwise might not go to a big film screening or would never choose to watch something on TV because it's new technology and they're excited to see it. They'll watch it and have a really profound encounter.
Stanford University, for those who are interested, have a virtual reality lab, and they're studying behavior change and virtual reality, and they've done a lot of environmental pieces. What they found is that, as you're saying, that you can really create these profound shifts in people's thinking, their worldview, but it's not all good either. They're also studying how if people are using violent VR gaming experiences, that it can increase violent tendencies. So, I think part of what we all share in exploring this space is this technology is just going to come on more and faster. So how do we really wrap our heads around what it's good to use for, but also be really eyes wide open about it's got downsides like any other technology. And I actually want to go back to Ben. You mentioned in your introduction around the accessibility of this technology, and it's new, it's not cheap yet to do, etc. So I just wondering if you could share some thoughts on equity and virtual reality. How do we really increase the access and opportunity for communities, community-based organizations, justice groups, etc., to leverage these tools?
Yeah, I think the barriers to entry are gradually being lowered. And I think there's sort of two main schools of thought of how to leverage the technology. And I think one is what Awamana and Lynette's work, and your work, has focused on bringing that experience into high-level policy spaces where, a 17-minute experience, you can't screen it a huge number of times to a huge number of people, but the people who see it have this very profound experience, and the impact of that experience has vast ripples. What I'm working on now is sort of trying to bring that accessibility out into the world. And so what we're working on now is trying to create containers for these experiences that bring it out into the world. So an exhibition that leverages the power of the film and then ties the power of that film to the work that various organizations are doing on the issue. So it's definitely in a sort of experimental phase now where we're trying to figure out how we get these technologies out to the public. We love the folks at RYTZ. They're a really incredible organization out of Dallas that is really bringing these technologies into the community, and they have a giant exhibition that is open to the public and does a really great job of bringing schools and young people in to have these experiences. So the barriers are shifting, and that's sort of what we're working on now. Is distribution is a huge barrier. People don't have headsets yet, so we're trying to bring the headsets to people and facilitate those transformative experiences for them.
Lauren, I'm wondering if you could pick up on that question as well in terms of look ahead San Francisco and how equity and access was considered in that project development.
Sure. So just to kind of recap a little bit, so Look Ahead San Francisco is showing 3 different areas around the city and how they're going to be affected by sea level rise. So part of the motivation behind why we designed the project the way that we designed it is because, like we were saying before, in the climate communication space or in the environmental space, we haven't always done a really good job of moving away from the doom and gloom perspective, and instead what we wanted to do was elevate what a better future could look like, or a better alternative. So the whole design of the app was really around elevating what that better future could look like and making that a motivation. So part of the design, as you'll see if you try it out in the showcase, is the really interactive piece around being able to give feedback through the app and to start to co-create just ideas around what the risk really looks like and what responses could look like. So instead of trying to create a prescriptive understanding of what the city should do or what public policy should look like, it really is about opening up the platform so that people can communicate directly with us around what they value about their community, what they love about it, whether that's where they live or where they work, and then provide that information and give it back. So another key piece is, of course, if you're from San Francisco or have spent any time here, you know it's an incredibly diverse city. And even with our website and with some of the content that we produce, we made sure that it was translated into different languages, into Filipino, Spanish, and Mandarin, so that we're not creating yet another linguistic barrier. Of course, we know, like Ben was saying, VR it's not cheap, and the accessibility part around the development and the distribution is still something that we're hoping, I think, all of us to work on, so that over time, anyone who wants to use it can use it. But the app is free, and another part of what we were doing, as well as the engagement campaign. So it can be easy to test something out when you're at home and you're in your own comfortable space. It's another thing to experience it on the street corner, where what you're seeing in real life is mirroring what you're seeing in the virtual world. So we also wanted to make sure that we were going out and going to the museums and the eco centers and the places where people were, so taking it to where they were located, and also doing things with school children, like K through 12. So it's not just something that like adults do, it's something that at any age or background you can have that experience.
Yeah, if you download Look At onto your phone, there's questions in the VR experience, and the responses to that we gather and share directly with the city of San Francisco to factor in what the community concerns are into their planning efforts. I want to move a little bit. You've talked a bit about some of the outcomes and the ability to really influence decision makers with your piece. Matthew, I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about what were some of the responses and outcomes from the project that you worked on.
Overall, it's been very good. I think the fact that it's a piece that comes together with a feature is quite interesting, because the feature it has its own distribution and its own network. We've been to over 50 festivals on the planet, so not every festival takes VR, but some of them do, and now we're going to have full theatrical in the States. So I think it's an interesting also tool when people just spend an hour, like 90 minutes in the theater, and they really, the mindset is different also, because they went just through all the movie, and they've been emotionally touched, and then just like, okay, now you get the story, just go there. And I think just having this kind of mixed media is quite interesting, but it's just touching different, I think different parts of the emotion, because I still believe a lot in linear traditional filmmaking. And I think mixing them can be very efficient. But we were just speaking with Ben just before, like the distribution model is still totally up in the air. It's like no really, and the technology is moving very fast in a way as the cameras that now are available weren't like 5 years ago. So just increasing all the time the capacity of making good cinematic, stereoscopic VR. But yet the platform is not. I don't feel it's ready for the mass consumption. And also, I think people who try. I've been following a good example. I think that's called Enemy. It's an augmented reality project. They've been developing it for almost like 4 or 5 years with the MIT Doc Labs, and it's basically an empathy piece where you can be within the skin of the enemy. So you have like a Palestinian-Israeli conflict on the Maras and Guatemala. So it's basically how you can be under the skin of the enemy and speak to the enemy, and it's all like photogrammetry, so you can really it's very immersive. But I remember that we were building that, and so in MIT you have like this very heavy laptop, extremely powerful laptop on the backpack, and all of a sudden Apple just released the AR kits, and within like a week they just changed the code. Suddenly have a laptop that was actually more efficient than every single AR. And I think it's interesting to just, a lot of people are talking about making this, like debate about, should be like mixed reality, AR, VR. It's like, I think very confusing because it's just, and my point of view is we shouldn't as storyteller, we shouldn't be technology driven and really think about what's the story and the outreach instead of trying to be the first in making some content for the new gadget, basically.
Yeah, great, thank you. I think the importance of using this with other mediums is critical. The other thing that sounds like we found, but also others, is the use of it to open a conversation, and particularly on these issues, it can be very emotional for people to have that first-person immersive experience. And so making sure you're thinking about the dialogue that follows and how you're emotionally supporting people to move from, oh my goodness, to now I can act, because that felt experience is so profound. With Look Ahead, we did a project in Marin County, and we saw kids whose homes were in our view, and we showed them underwater, and they're, oh my God, that's my home, so it can be very emotional and important to support people through that. So it is moving very quickly, to Matthew's point, this whole space, and I want to just ask everyone one final question, then we'll go to questions from anyone who is interested in asking the panelists. So this is moving fast. I remember when we were doing Look Ahead San Francisco, it was like the first time more than 1 million VR headsets have been sold in a month. It keeps accelerating. So I want to start with you, Peter. Where do you see the field going, and where do you see the opportunities for people who want to use this technology to create movements around climate and sustainability and equity issues?
Well, I just having kind of, trying to make a business of this as well. It's interesting because the sort of purveyors of technology, the Facebooks, the Apples, the Googles, and all of that, they sort of are the gatekeepers for a lot of these new mediums. They control the web, they control the hardware, a lot of the platforms for this, and they've put an immense amount of energy in these new formats in AR, VR, and MR. Which kind of sets the stage for what devices and what conduits creators like ourselves are able to make, from capturing on camera to displaying on different devices. These are the theaters that we can show our movies in, so to speak. And so, as far as that goes, I've seen a bit of the trial of disillusionment in VR through 2016 to a certain extent, but all the while, more and more headsets were being pushed out into the public. People were still adapting it, and the medium is growing. And so now what's beginning to happen in 2017, 2018, is we're seeing more and more awareness of what the medium is in VR specifically. We're seeing really explosive growth in AR because it's very democratic. Everybody only needs a mobile phone, and in this world, everybody already has one almost, you know, and at least in many environments, there's a lot of that equipment, and that allows the messaging in these, you know, when there's millions of these headsets out there, whether it's in an event space, in a common space, or people individually have access to them through institutions or in their homes, that makes it a lot easier to send these messages. You know, if schools and institutions have these, and if events are promoting these and tying them in, then it becomes a conduit to send these messages. And we're seeing that the barrier coming down pretty rapidly. I think VR, you know, and I'll wrap this up, but VR is very much an emotional pull. It's very much a first-person experience. It's very experiential, so it's very powerful, but it's a little bit harder to scale. But we see that scale increasing in terms of people who can experience it. AR is very casual and bite-sized and easy to scale, but that is maybe in the long term a little more challenging to create that emotional bond with, but it's very easy right now to get out there. So I think these new formats are evolving all the time. We're trying to keep up with them, and we're very excited because both of them have this emotional tie that we feel like are important for causes like this to be able to really connect with people.
Nicole, what about you? Where are your thoughts on where VR is going and the opportunities or the challenges for using it as a tool for addressing climate issues?
And I think one thing that as it is continuing to become more accessible, which I think it is, I mean, we made the decision to make a Wabana for a Vive headset because we wanted to have 6 degrees of freedom in the vision experience. And so actually we moved from augmented reality using like a trick on the Vive headset so that you're looking at the room that you're in, and then it starts to, elements from the forest start to layer on that. And then you're taken in the forest, and then when you go into the vision experience, then that becomes volumetric. And so those are 3 different technologies that we've kind of put together, but trying to take advantage of each one as a portal. And that means that fewer people can see it, because the volumetric piece can't be pulled down onto a phone and it can't be shown like on the headsets that are being shown today. So we're going to set it up here later. And that's a trade-off, but what we try to do in the meantime as it's scaling, you know, we believe eventually we'll be able to offer a good version of this experience to more people. And in the meantime, we're trying to take advantage of a larger ecosystem, you know, like you were talking about with the feature films. So, for instance, you know, trying to leverage press. So if we have this high-profile project at a high-profile place, like we were just at the Venice Film Festival, then we can work to try to get a story in Wired about indigenous representation at the film festival and really trying to maximize the impact of the story that way, even though fewer people are seeing it. We did an augmented reality piece, which is basically a butterfly that is triggered in AR when you point your phone at a bracelet, which were made by women in the Yawanawa villages. And the butterfly, the health of the butterfly is connected to rainforest data. So if there's higher than normal fire hotspots, then the butterfly looks sad. And it's just this emotional kind of virtual connection. So we gave those to people after they've seen the piece, and now the Yawanawa are partnering with a clothing product company that is going to sell those. So it's trying to think of how to leverage all those things together, I think, in the meantime as it becomes more scalable.
Lauren, any thoughts from you on that question?
I think that one of the potentials is really projecting into the future, which is partly what Look Ahead did, but also recreating the past. So whether that's thinking about kind of anthropological approach, so areas that we think we know what they look like, or we think we know what a natural space is like. Humans have been constructing and reconstructing land and changing the way that we use land and our relationship to it for thousands of years. So what we think about the best way, whether it's a public policy or urban planning or development perspective, could be informed by recreating what that area looked like 100 years ago, 500 years ago, 1,000 years ago. And as someone who's from New York, thinking about like what Manhattan looked like 500 years ago. You know, the idea of what we're building towards I think should be really informed by where we're coming from. And because no one was around with virtual reality technology at that point in time, I think it can be helpful to think about the human nature relationships in the context of almost like a book, like unfolding, like where were we at these different points in history and what does progress look like. So this idea of virtual reality being a tool, and it should be a tool that serves us, a tool that helps us to be more human and more connected, not just another piece of technology that divides us. And I think that that's really why the virtual reality for good piece is so important, because it centers around human connections and environmental stewardship. So I would personally love to see really that sort of time continuum and using VR in that way.
So I'm going to ask one final question and open it up for any questions that you have. And I want to ask Lara, in terms of your community's experience working with virtual reality, would you do it again? And if so, where do you think you could take another project like the one you did?
I think one thing that came to my mind here was that the making of virtual reality was a work of collaboration and alliance, with Nicole and Ineche. Tashka, my husband, said we trusted them. So the whole process, expressed a lot of qualities of this collaboration. And this kind of collaborations and alliances, that's what we need now in the world, in order to respond to climate problems, climate changes and everything. And yes, I think we will do it again. It was very, very hard, it's a lot of work, but I think totally we will do it again. The whole process was, as I said, very, very beautiful. It was an example of collaboration, love, and humanity.
Great, thank you. So would anyone like to ask a question of any of our panelists? Just one sec.
Okay, so I think this is a general question. I'm Pernilla Bergman from Ericsson, telecom company from the research department, and we are working with UN Habitat on VR and mixed reality to engage young people in co-creation in terms of city planning, and we're seeing really beautiful reactions to that, because I think the discussion here today has been a lot around using VR for illustration, for storytelling and so on. So I would like to hear your views on co-creation, because I think it's another very important application.
Okay, Lauren, you want to take a first crack at the question around co-creation?
When you say
planning. Yeah, so she was talking about young people and using VR as a way to put together emergency plans, right? Was that correct?
No, not really. They were building models in Minecraft, and then we took them through the mixed reality, and then they could see what their creation in the street. So it was to get the young engaged and help them develop ideas.
Okay, great. So, go ahead.
So just so that I make sure I'm on the right page, so it's sort of like the individual student education and like using VR or AR in their education and like the process.
Yeah, like working with people and communities to co-create the whole experience.
Right.
So, yeah.
So I think that, well, there are a couple of different ways to think about that. So I think one way is the way that you get the initial kind of charrette or design or workshop experience. So part of what we did with Look Ahead was working with different city agencies and understanding what are their existing sets of programs that can encourage people to take a specific action, like converting their home to 100% renewable energy. So sometimes that's the way you're looking at what are the policy goals and how do we create individual action that will help to achieve those collective goals. That's one piece. I think the other piece, which is partly what we're doing with Look Ahead now, is connecting the current students, like San Francisco public school students, and part of their overall environmental curriculum, and seeing how are they using the technology. And it's like we were saying before, it's a tool, and what is the project or event that they're going to plan as a classroom or as a school around what they've learned in VR. So for a lot of them, the idea is that this is part of a longer term engagement. So how do we use that tool from the beginning as a way of sparking their interest in focusing on environmental issues more broadly, or what they can do to encourage their community? And what we found a lot of times working with kids, they take it back home to their parents, and it's about encouraging their family, whether it's something like recycling or purchasing products that have less packaging. So it's kind of a ripple effect.
Ben, any thoughts on that question?
Yeah.
Pass them the mic.
I mean, as storytellers, in the filmmaking world, traditionally, there's this whole idea of the director as the author of the story. And I think VR really deconstructs that relationship and puts you into a context where, I mean, it's different when you're doing 3D modeling and creating that form of VR, which differentiates sort of 360 video and these other forms of VR. But as a filmmaker, when I'm going into a community, there's a technical limitation of when you're filming in 360 degrees, I either have to be underneath the camera or hiding somewhere in a bush or behind a wall. And what that forces is a kind of co-creative relationship that I think other mediums don't necessarily have, because you have one person behind the camera. There's this sort of subject-object dynamic that can be really unhealthy and toxic, and particularly in the documentary world. So when you have to put a camera down and then run away from it, there's a level of trust and relationship building that has to go into that process. And so every film that I've made, the folks that I've been collaborating with, whose stories I've been helping to tell, they've all been credited as co-creators of the piece, because they really are essentially, they are driving the narrative, and it's, the way that you create the film is you're forced to be collaborative through the technical limitations, which I think is actually a huge strength.